Are we recording? Sure. Are we? Okay, I'll call the special regional council meeting to order. Please be advised that today's meeting is available for the public to attend virtually and is being recorded. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda, please? Moved by Councillor Penny, seconded by Councillor Gerwing. All those in favor? Carried. Delegations, WildSafe BC. Very well. Vanessa, Heather is not here. Oh, there we go. We have them all. It's good to see you. I'll start with introductions. My name is Gary Foster. I'm the Mayor of the Northern Rockies. And
sorry, Corporate Manager Jaylene McIver.
CEO Scott Berry.
Lorraine Gerwing, Regional Councillor.
Todd Penny, Regional Councillor.
Danny Souls, Regional Councillor.
John Roper, Regional Councillor.
Kyle Andrews, Regional Councillor.
Sean O'Shaughnessy, Chief Billing Official.
very well. Would you care to do the introductions for WildSafe?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have Vanessa Isnardi is the Provincial Coordinator for WildSafe BC. Heather Richardson is the Program Coordinator for WildSafe BC. And of course, we all know Ms. Kim Oglinski, who is the NRM Northern Rockies Coordinator.
Welcome all. Vanessa, would you like to start off?
Actually, I get to go last. Kim's
You get to go last.
Yeah, Kim's going to present on the season report, and then Heather's going to present on the bear hazard assessment, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the Bear Smart Community Program. But thank you very much.
Okay, Mrs. Oglinski, take it away.
I'm just going to try and share my screen here.
Hold on, I have to allow you. Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Okay, hold on. Can everybody see that?
Not yet.
Great. Hey, Jay.
Yeah. It's okay.
I'm getting smarter. I actually sent the presentation to Jay just in case, because this has happened to me before. But I did make an 11th hour change, so I will. Hers is a little bit different, but that's okay. Now I got to get back on here. Okay, there we go. And now I don't see anything.
Do you want me to just share?
Maybe you should, Jaylene.
Okay. There we go.
Easy peasy. Some of the screens, guys, are going to look a little bit similar to last year. I've tried not to duplicate much, just so that I can keep your attention focused where we need it to be focused. So I'll move on from here. Just our WildSafe BC logo, and it's not letting me, well, let me go further. Jaylene, you just have to skip slides, I guess, if you're going to be doing it. Sorry about that, peoples.
Oh, good. There we go. Is that the one you wanted to start, or?
That's the first one. That's just the WildSafe BC logo. We can move to the second screen as well quickly.
We're seeing the group shot. Are you seeing the group shot?
I am not.
Oh, there we go. How about now?
Yes, but there's a screen, there's an actual shot in between, but it's okay, leave it here.
Okay.
Just letting people know WildSafe BC, this is who we are. We are a combination of WildSafe BC, the Ministry of Environment Climate Strategy, which is the Conservation Officer Service, as well as the NRM bylaw team, which is James, Jennifer, and Sean O'Shaughnessy. And this is all of us in a picture earlier this year. We can go to the next screen, Jaylene. This screen, same screen you saw last year, but it's important, so I've included it again, letting you know that bears are always going to enter our community. The trick is to get them to move from one side to the other quickly or in and out quickly. We certainly don't want them to get distracted by human provided food such as fruit trees, garbage, that kind of thing. Once that happens, and we saw that a little bit this year, once that happens with a bear who starts to equate humans with foods, is they become human habituated, and they tolerate humans in much closer proximity than they would normally. And this is where we find an increase in potential for dangerous interactions between the bears and us. And this is exactly why we have this program. And we'll go through and explain what we're doing to prevent that from happening. Next slide, Jay. Again, very similar shot to last year. This just shows you the calls that came in to the wrap line. Again, I can't stress enough that this doesn't mean we had 200 black bears running throughout the community. This just shows you where each black bear was, and one black bear, it's not uncommon for one bear to generate 10 or 15 calls through the wrap line. The big clump here, you see a big clump. When someone calls in and their address doesn't necessarily fit with the wrap programming, they throw them all in the address at the post office. So we didn't have 200 bears descending on the post office either. That's just where they put them. Red bears, again, are bears that were brought in by the attractant of garbage. The kind of violet purple colors are fruit trees. The aqua colored are unknown or simply just a sighting. And then the blue are vegetable gardens. So this is why it's important to phone into the wrap line, because we do actually track this, and this is how we get our, this is one of the ways we generate our statistics to provide this information, not only to you guys, but to the public. Next slide, Jay. This is just showing us the average from 2016 to 2020, the black bears that have been reported in the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality. Important to point out, in October, there's none. This is not actually the case. There were black bears in the community in October. They just weren't reported. So we're not much different here. I think we had 124 cases this year. I think I'll have the numbers later on in the slides, but this just shows you a comparison for the last 4 years. Next slide, Jay. This is just showing you the same thing, 4 years, black bear reports based on attractants, what brought them into town in the first place. Showed you similar slides last year. Again, 2020 is the red, and you'll see garbage is here. Fruit is kind of in the middle, and then the other is a small little piece for other as well. You'll see fruit trees is quite a bit higher from last year. We saw a significant amount of activity in that respect, with bears accessing not only municipal fruit trees, but residential fruit trees as well, private residential fruit trees as well. Next slide, Jay. And this just shows you same thing, 4 years, but by species. Obviously, you know, it shows high black bear activity here. Just want to point out, you know, we've also seen an increase in deer activity, you know, throughout these 4 years, and then as well as other. And other is going to be, you know, coyotes, foxes, lynx, that kind of thing. So it's always interesting to have these statistics. You'll see grizzly bear way down. Of course, last year we had that grizzly bear running around out in Pioneer Way. This is sort of makes up for that difference. There was no grizzly bear running around Pioneer Way today, so less calls were generated. Deer this year, we had an increase in deer calls, mainly because we did have 2 or at least 1 injured deer running around the community with a broken or damaged, injured front leg. So that's generated quite a few calls from the community. Next slide, Jay.
Just one moment, Kim. Councillor Andrews, you got some comment?
I'm just curious if there's been any word on that wounded deer lately. I haven't seen them around.
I'll let CO Clancy answer that if you'd like.
Can you guys hear me? This is my first time being off mute.
Yes.
Yeah, we're aware of it. He's still around, still injured, but definitely very mobile. We've got a couple complaints recently. I was actually, just before the call, I was drafting up a news release for the paper and Northern Rockies Facebook page.
Thank you. Do you want to continue, Ms. Zaglinski?
Yep. So you all know a big part of my job is bin tagging and door-to-door canvassing. That's a huge part of the educational component. Since June 1st, 2020, we tagged 56 garbage bins that were out prior to 5 a.m. on collection day, and 512 for being at the curb after 7 p.m. on collection day. As well, almost 500 homeowners had informational materials dropped off at their door or in person. Those materials are the WildSafe BC Black Bear brochure, the NRM's bylaw, a copy of their bylaw, as well as our door hangers. There were 80 repeats with bins compared to 91 in 2019. Overall, the 56 garbage bins prior to collection day is a win for us, I think. Huge improvement. We're going to show you some different graphs moving on here, and it'll show you what I mean by that. But overall, I think people, the residents are getting it. A lot of the repeat I call them the repeat customers, but a lot of our repeat customers now are very similar to they were last year. So I think those are the residents that no matter what you do, this is just the way they're going to do things, and that's that. Go ahead and next screen, Jay. Similar, this just shows you yellow are the people that repeated only one time after they were stickered. And then the red are the homeowners that continually repeated 3 or more times. We do have some that, repeated 5 or 6 times. Again, those are almost the same houses as they were last year. So they're just stuck in their ways and not gonna change. Next slide, Jay. I put these side by side. The first one is this year, the second one is last year. So just, this simple slide right here shows you that, I think we are making headway, and we are seeing certainly some gains. And that's what we want, absolutely. Next slide, Jay.
Is there any thought of finding these people who are repeat offenders? I mean, if you can't get through to them by simply reminding them 5 times, maybe it's time to start handing out fines so that they get the picture.
Mayor Foster, I agree with you 100%. I was surprised that we don't have James or anybody here from the fire department. They are under that would have to be the direction of mayor and council. They're under the impression that mayor and council still wants to, the most important piece is that education component. I think there's some issues with the bylaw that they want to have a little look-see over the winter. We're going to focus or have a focus group, and we're going to have a look at that bylaw again. But yeah, absolutely. Those that aren't getting it and after, numerous warnings or numerous informational packets that have been put on their doorstep should be fined. That's sometimes the only way you're going to get through to people. But that would have to be, like I said, mayor and council would have to make that clear to those people enforcing it, and that would be your bylaw team.
Perfect. Okay. And I would agree with you that the education piece of this and the constant reminders to people, I mean, if people are trying to comply, they just forget, that's one thing. If they are deliberately thumbing their nose at this is something entirely different. But carry on.
Okay, this graph is awesome. I love this one. This is the number of bins left out too early in Fort Nelson, Airport West, and Airport East. You can see there are a number of weeks where we had absolutely no bins left or no bins out prior to collection day, or at least prior to when I was out and about. I went out anywhere between 9 and 11 p.m. That's not to say that somebody couldn't run out there at 11 p.m. and put their garbage out, but we just didn't see it. And we had a number of weeks where there was nothing out there. When that changes is usually weather dependent. If it's raining or snowing, sometimes we see that. A long weekend, sort of wreaks havoc sometimes. But next slide, Jay. This next slide shows you the number of bins that were left out too late. Jaden's just going to switch it for me. It shows a little bit different of a story, but it also shows you we did have 4 weeks where there were no bins left out too late. And again, that is a gain. This looks much better than it did last year. This is not the focus that the municipality or the bylaw team would like me to take, and until, or at least until we've had a look at that bylaw. It also depends on what time I go out. So originally I was going out anywhere between 7 and 8:30 because of course I wanted to make contact with these people with the educational brochures or whatnot. There are some shift workers in the community that don't get home until 8 o'clock. We recognize that. So we started going out a little bit later, anywhere between 8 and 9. We seem to have much better luck. There was a few less bins, certainly a few less bins out, in that next hour. But interesting, any of our more vocal customers that we may have saw on Facebook, they never had a repeat bin. So I know there were some that were very, very vocal on social media, that they couldn't do this or they couldn't do that. I just need to point out that they never did have a repeat bin after that. So that kind of bunks their original theory, but we could see our time go a little bit later. Like right now the bylaw is 7. It might not hurt to make that slightly later at 8 o'clock. I don't know that there'd be much difference. I don't recommend going any later than that, but that'll be a discussion for a later time. Moving on. I just put this here to show you that these are the areas, the highlighted areas are the homes in which I'm not going to use the word targeted, but these are specific areas that we identified last year and at the beginning of this year that would benefit from specific door-to-door visits and the leaving of educational material. We had to leave a lot of that on the doorstep because COVID prevented us from actually knocking on the door and making contact with people. However, if people came to their door because they heard me trying to attach something, I certainly had that conversation, with the 6 feet, keeping with the physical distancing. It started out being what we had identified, and then eventually as the year, the summer progresses, it becomes more of, okay, the bear's here, I got to go and do this tonight instead. This does not include anybody who had their bins out late. We're also given that informational package as well. So this is over and above anybody that had their bins out late. So like I said, we hit probably close to 500 homes got educational material left at their door this summer. Next slide, Jay. Just a couple fun slides. This is one of the ones from these ones that are on the back that are all wrinkled and faded. Those are from last year. This is from this year. So this is one of those cases where the person's just kind of living their own life and free spirit and doing what they want. And then the next slide is one that makes me giggle. It shouldn't say giggle, but it is kind of cute. This particular home does not have adequate storage. They don't have a shed. They don't have a garage. They don't have, any secure storage underneath their deck. This particular homeowner has had problems in the past with bears, has been issued warnings and whatnot. And this was her solution, was to use this chain, and it works. The bear didn't get into her garbage this year. But that's not what we want to see at every home for sure. Next slide, Jay. So from August 31st until October 31st, the bylaw team asked me to actually go out and have a look at what garbage cans look like in the morning and focus a little bit more there. So I did. And we were able to identify 95 bins that were overflowing the morning of collection. So there is still some education and some work that could be done here. For the most part, this isn't necessarily bears. These are probably ravens and crows. But nonetheless, on a windy day, this can wreak havoc. And I was surprised at how people put their garbage out on the curb. Sometimes I was aghast, to be honest. At one time, these would not be picked up by WildSafe. They would be left there, but that's not the case. All of these get picked up by WildSafe. And so as long as that keeps happening, we're going to keep seeing this. So that's something we need to, to consider in the future. Next slide, Jay. Commercial bins, we had a few issues with commercial bins this year. Nothing I don't think that we can correct or make a good kick at next year with the new business pledge from WildSafe BC. This one, the first picture isn't actually in town. That's actually on Pebble Drive. A residential person has this garbage can and they left it open after they threw their garbage in there, and it didn't take long for this fellow to figure that out. And then the second slide is of the black bear that we had in the community pretty much all summer. This was the first time, to my knowledge, that he got into garbage. He had strictly been on fruit until then. And then these are the two bins between Hillside and Spring Hill Apartments. And these have both been changed out. The apartment building, they now have metal lids. I think one is actually bear resistant and one isn't. And they changed those out very quickly. So, you know, there is that educational piece. They knew and they changed those out very, very fast. Next slide, Jay.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Glinski, Councilor Penny has a question.
Not a question, really, a bit of a statement on that first picture there. I know that out at 292 sub, we actually have had a couple of bears out there that have figured out how to open these bins. The metal lid bins, even though and repeatedly, we actually managed to catch them on film afterwards. So
yeah,
just so you know, it's not.
Sorry, Todd. There are some that have an actual metal bar. Are those the ones you're talking about that actually come up and over the top, or just the ones that look like this with no bar?
Yeah, that exactly like the one in that picture there. And like we've had several bears, different bears over the few years that have just figured out that if they push them open, they stay open.
Yep.
So
so at one time,
just so you know, it's not always just somebody leaving them open.
No, for sure. Absolutely. So at one time we did have bins in the community, and I'm assuming we still do. I've seen a couple of them where they actually have a bar from the front that actually goes up and over the top, which makes it resistant from the bears. No bin is bear proof, but at least makes it a little bit more difficult. You may want to contact your service provider and see. I know that the one company has a whole bunch of them. I can't think of their name right now. And I'm sure Wide Sky has some too, because at one time we had more of those ones with bars throughout the community than we did without. So I'm not really sure what happened there. Next slide, Jay. This is just an example of, I don't even know what. I happened to drive by this one day and I actually went and picked it up. This bin belongs to the school board, but it is locked. There's no public access. Somebody just threw their garbage bag on top of it. And left it there, and obviously ravens and stuff got in there, and I was really kind of disgusted, and I put that in there because it was just rank. I actually went through this garbage because I thought if I could actually find a bill or something with somebody's name on it, I was actually going to give the conservation officer a call and let them deal with it. I actually think it might have been a tourist. It wasn't really residential garbage. It looked like a lot of old food wrappers, baby diapers. Maybe a traveler just needed somewhere to dump his garbage and he chose there and figured that was good. Probably would have been had a raven not got into it, right? But those are the types of things that we're looking at in the community. Next slide. Again, this is our friendly bear that was here all summer. He was able to access a lot of fruit from trees. And in the second shot, I believe he ate so many apples that night, he couldn't go any further. He literally just plunked himself down there and had a nap for a couple of hours and then left after that. Go ahead with the next slide, Jay. Same bear again. I think this one he's going home, I hope, the other way. And here he is again in some residential garbage. He was accessing fruit for the first little while, for quite a while. And then, like I said, got that little bit of a taste for garbage, and that was the end of that. Same slide I showed you last year, just showing you the human sourced attractants, the things that we can actually do something about. Next slide. A few more pictures of just things within the community this summer. A couple where bears did get into garbage, some where ravens got into them. Not as bad as last year. So we are making some gains, but these are still things that we're seeing in the community, and things that still concern us, and things that make me want to keep going, so that we can come to the point where I don't have to show these pictures anymore. Next slide, Jay. Again, reminding you, that the key to keeping wildlife wild and communities safe is attractant management. That's something we can do fairly easily. We all have a responsibility to do it. We're getting there. We're certainly seeing improvements year after year, and there's a little bit of work still, but I think we're making gains. Next slide. Again, very, very important. If we observe dangerous wildlife doing any of the following things, we should be reporting that to the RAP line. The statistics we use are only as good as the people that call it in. I know that there is concern. I'm hearing it that people don't want to call things in because they don't want to get a ticket, or they don't want to get a warning, or whatever. I've been advised that they can call these in anonymously if they want. But we need to reiterate that it's, in order to get the best statistics that we can, to make the best decisions that we can, we need to be calling in all of these reports, taking that, we can find that 30 seconds to post on social media. We need to take another 45 seconds and post, and phone the RAP line as well. We can also do that online. I didn't actually put the link here, but it was posted all over social media all summer. So you can also, you don't have to phone, you can do it online as well, if that's your preferred method. Next slide.
Ms. Zaglinski, Councilor Goring has a question.
Thanks, Kim. That was going to be my point too. I'm hearing a fair number of residents are done with the RAP line. They're, for various reasons, they're not going to do it. So I think that if we are going to rely on that RAP line for relevant data, we need to figure something else out. So I'm heartened to hear that you can do it online. And I'm wondering if next year that can be more of a focus.
Absolutely.
And the other thing is, has an app been developed so that we can just do it on our phone? Just easy.
Not that I'm aware of. CO Clancy, are you aware of anything like that, like of an app?
No, not right now. I don't think there's anything in the process either.
No, I've heard nothing.
Because we have that online reporting option.
Jennifer or Vanessa, have you heard of anything like that?
No, there was the BC Wildlife Federation had an app for reporting illegal dumping. I'm not sure. I heard recently that the app was down, so I'm not sure. And I don't know if it took wildlife conflict reports. I'd have to check that.
Okay.
But the online link is really easy, and it takes 2 seconds. You don't have to wait on hold. And I think it's also important to note that if people don't call, and if the province doesn't see wildlife occurrences and conflicts, then why put resources towards a community if there are no calls? So I think it's really important that people still continue to call. It's the easiest way we can collect data rather than reinventing another system, which we don't have the resources to do, and it can be very expensive. But that online form definitely, if it's on the Northern Rockies Municipal website, and if it's promoted by WildSafe BC, we can encourage people to use that online form, which only takes a few seconds to do.
Councilor Goring.
Kim, are you going to add the online address on all of the information that you're giving out?
I believe it's already there, Lorraine. So it's on our printed material, I believe. A lot of people aren't necessarily reading that material though, which is something else we found. Clearly, if we are going there 2 or 3 or 4 times, they're not reading it, or maybe reading part of it. But I do believe it's on just about every piece of it's on our Black Bear brochure. It's not necessarily on our bylaw, and it was on our new door hangers, but maybe not the bright yellow door hangers were door hangers from last year. But I think it's on the new door hangers, isn't it, Vanessa?
I'm not sure because it's a fairly long address.
Is it? Okay.
So it might take some very specific, maybe some infographics or some other materials to help promote the online form. Might be a strategy for next year.
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, it's valid point. If it's quick and it's easy, we can certainly make something up and make sure that information is scattered everywhere and spread widely. That's an easy thing to do. Lorraine, thank you for bringing that up.
Great, thanks, Kim.
So I think, Vanessa, you know, we see a lot of reports on Facebook, and people are on Facebook telling each other where these bears are, not reporting it to the RAP line. I think what Ms. Glinski has brought up is very relevant, is the RAP line has to be user-friendly, and it has to be easily accessible, and we have to find some way to get the public to use the RAP line rather than Facebook, because obviously Facebook is not accomplishing the goal of collecting these statistics. So I think that should be a goal, is to improve the ease of access and the user friendliness of the RAP line. Councillor Roper.
A question for Scott. Did we get any of the bins retrofitted with those locking mechanisms that we were discussing earlier?
We're working through it, but Sean can probably update us on where we are with that, because we did have some challenges with from a contractor perspective getting them retrofitted.
Yeah, Councillor Roper, currently to date, we have 41 of those bins are ready to go out. The goal is to have everything ready by the end of February. There were some issues with the clasps that were being used. We wanted to find something that will be easy for anyone with any dexterity issues. And the manufacturer was having some trouble sourcing those clasps. And that was what the holdup was on those. So everything should be ready to go end of February, early March for all those bins.
Just in regards to those bins, and I've had that conversation, which I would really like to see one of those bins make its way to Kamloops for the actual, there is an actual testing that can be done, and then they could get the bear resistant status, I believe. It would be nice if we could send one of those down. I don't know what the cost is, but it would certainly be something that would work well into the wildlife management conflict plan that we're going to talk about a little bit later. So I'll just leave that with everybody for now. Go ahead, John.
Sorry, Kim. I have spoken to Heather about that, because I believe Heather does kind of oversee the bear bin testing. Mm-hmm. So we've talked about that previously.
Councillor Roper.
I was just going to say, if we wanted to do that, I would make the motion to get more information on getting those bins down to Kamloops. But it sounds like that process is ongoing. So,
Councillor Goering.
So I just want to confirm that none of the retrofitted bins made it out into the community this past season.
That's correct, Councillor Goering.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Councillor Roper?
Did we have any residents contact the town inquiring about those retrofits? Do we have a list of people that are wanting to get them for next year?
Councillor Roper, to my knowledge, there were a few individuals, once the word got out, that did contact Public Works. However, there was a list that was passed along to us from both Kim and the CO in their observations throughout the community of 65 residents. And those were the residents that we were going to issue the bins to first and go from there.
And I talked about that last year, John. Those 65 residences were chosen by literally driving around and having a look at properties. And those 65 are the properties that we could not visibly see any other method of storage, being a garage, shed, under, I didn't start traipsing through people's backyards, but from the road, those are the ones that we couldn't identify any other mechanism for storage. And that's how those 65 were chosen.
Councillor Goering.
So just a question then, if we've got already 65 properties identified, but we only have 41 bins, is that accurate?
We have 41 bins that are now retrofitted with the new fitting, but we have the remaining to make up the 65. They will be ready by the end of February, first part of March.
Okay, so just to confirm that the 65 will be ready by the end of March.
Correct.
Thank you.
You can go to the next screen. I think it's the question screen, and I think we're already there. So,
Kim, may I add about the bear resistant bins? We send out information every year in February, and Sean, you're on our email list for that. So we send out, we'll send out a 2021 application form and an information package, and then applications are due in March, and they're done on a first come first serve basis. And depending on what 2021 looks like, for 2020 we didn't have very many spots available because the wildlife park was closed to the public, but I recommend completing the application form and sending it back as soon as you can.
Okay, I lied. I had one more slide, but I'm going to make this quick. It should be no surprise to anybody that we are seeing an increase in our deer population within the community. That's something I think that Mayor and Council is going to have to look at and take very seriously here. We're seeing a lot more fawns, a lot more triplets, a lot more twins. You know, within the community, they are damaging infrastructure, like even trees that the Minnesota, green infrastructure, meaning plants, flowers, trees. Of course, I've just given you an example. Yes, this is my house. I have no problem showing you this. You guys know my feelings on deer. You know, that first picture is August of 2019. This next picture was March of 2020. I was gone for 11 days last year. They somehow made their way between the wildlife fencing I had and my shrubs, and they decimated my shrubs in 11 days. So that's how quickly a deer can do that damage. Not only that, but you know, during rutting season, deer can be very, very dangerous. I'm absolutely shocked that we haven't seen something happen already with the amount of deer I see in town at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I start getting really uneasy about 3 o'clock in the afternoon when kids are walking home from school. I think it is only a matter of time, and I do believe that we can probably you know, WildSafe BC, if this is something that the municipality wants to, might be able to help you out with that as well. That's it on that. And the next screen is questions, but I think I've used up more time than I wanted to here, because I think the bear hazard assessment and the conflict management plan are important. Are there any final questions moving forward, or can we move on?
Let's move on, Kim.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys.
Heather, did you want to start your presentation?
Yes, I'll just pull it up and share the screen with you. Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Perfect. So my name is Heather Richardson. I'm the program coordinator for WildSafe BC. I work with Vanessa Isnardi out of our Kamloops headquarters. And I have been working on the bear hazard assessment. It was initiated in 2019, thanks to the folks at the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality who wanted to see this move forward and have more knowledge about bear conflicts in the community, to start making more of a plan. So this was done with the help of Jaylene, of Kim Iglinski, our local WildSafe BC coordinator. Vanessa Isnardi also provide a lot of information, review, and advice. Valerie Caden Baptiste was responsible for mapping the attractants. Paul Coop is the GIS technician who is responsible for preparing many of the maps. And Conservation Officer Jeff Clancy provided a lot of information, and we referenced his expert knowledge throughout the document as well. So the process and purpose of the bear hazard assessment, which I'll call the BHA, the steps involved were analyzing the history of bear reports. So all of the reports that are made to the RAP line or directly to the Wildlife Alert Reporting Program were downloaded and analyzed. We mapped them looking for hotspots, looking for trends. Thanks to Valerie, who mapped the attractant data, we were able to identify non-natural attractants, also looking for trends and hotspots. Then we identified natural attractants, bear habitats, bear foods, and corridors. So how are bears moving through the community? Where do they have food and where do they have shelter to feel safe that they can travel through. And all of this information was used to determine risk areas. So areas that we just wanted to highlight and spend more time thinking about what are hazards on each of these areas and how can we mitigate them. So that forms the bear hazard assessment, the BHA, and the next step of the process is to inform the human bear conflict management plan and make recommendations to address the hazards identified in the BHA. And so the BHA and the human bear conflict management plan are the first two steps for a community to become a bear smart community. And that's what Vanessa will speak about next. So looking at the history of bear reports, first of all, there's a few limitations. Of course, as Kim was mentioning, the report data we have is limited to the number of reports that are actually made. So it's not showing us bear distribution or bear populations. It's showing us when there's been an interaction and that's triggered someone to then call it in. Also, while some of these reports lead to a CO responding to the incident, many of the reports are non-confirmed. So potentially there's misidentification, or if someone's using the online form, there might be, they might have made a typo or communication issue when they're calling it into the call center. So a few limitations. However, the information is very powerful. We're able to see a lot of trends. We can see that there's been peaks in black bear reports in 2017 and 2019. This report was completed earlier this year, so we don't have data for 2020 in the report, but as Kim was letting us know, we have had less black bear reports this year, but they've been more on average with the 5-year average. You'll see there's some grizzly bear reports in the broader regional municipality, but none within the town site, within the boundaries of the town site. In 2019, there were a notable 33 grizzly bear reports, and 26 of 33 of those were from an incident of one grizzly bear accessing attractants, gardens, fruit trees, chickens in some rural properties just a couple kilometers outside of the town site. So not in the town site proper, but quite nearby and relevant for us still. And that's an example of how one bear could create many reports. And then we were noticing some reports peaking in July in previous years, and then in 2019 reports peaking in the fall, and then dropping off when bears are entering their dens. This is a map of the bear reports in Fort Nelson. In the town site, we only had black bear reports, so that's what we're looking at. And it's overlaid with a density layer. So Paul is showing us where the hotspots are, and we'll see that most of the reports are in the residential areas. Other things to note is that 35% of the reports are associated with conflict, and the other reports could be sightings or other interactions. So it's actually quite positive. For Fort Nelson, it seems that there's actually quite a number of people calling in when they're seeing bears in the town, even if it's not a conflict, and that's quite good. We don't have that in all communities, so it is important to keep providing communication. We want people to call into the RAP line, but Fort Nelson's doing pretty well on that, we think. And then since 2014, there's been 23 black bears destroyed. And so one of the goals for the bear hazard assessment is to keep the community safe, to reduce property damage, and also to reduce negative impacts on black bears. Looking at non-natural attractants associated with black bear reports, many of them are associated with garbage, the large majority, and then other reports are associated with fruit trees, freezers, and then livestock as well. For Residential fruit trees, I would suspect that those would be one of the areas where there would be more underreporting. And that's because if a bear has knocked over a garbage bin, it might be more evident to the average resident that that's an issue, a conflict that they should call in. If bears have caused any property damage, that might be more obvious. Sometimes people are not always worried about bears accessing residential fruit trees. And so if it's not identified as a conflict by some community members, they might be less likely to call it in. That's another reason why.
Robinson, just on your previous slide there, 23 bears were destroyed. Maybe I could ask Mr. Clancy why conservation doesn't tranquilize the bears and take them for a ride out of town.
What was the date for those 23? The date range?
Since 2014, yeah.
Yeah, we're not in the business of relocating habituated and food condition bears. It's just not a viable solution, to make it short and sweet.
Okay, and these would be bears that were habituated rather than ones that were simply found in the town limits. Is that correct?
I can't speak to that number. I'm not sure the history of those bears. I know since my time here, which has been fairly short, they've been cases where bears have been seen in the community constantly, and they've just got to that point where they're so food conditioned or so habituated that they do need to be euthanized.
Okay, thank you.
Just so you know, I do talk a little bit about the benefits, well, the lack of benefits of relocation and translocation in my presentation as well. I'll touch on that briefly.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Do you want to continue, Ms. Robinson?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Ms. Richardson.
Yes, so the next slide, we're looking at a map of wildlife attractants in Fort Nelson. So there's a number of attractants on the map. The red boxes are commercial garbage, so large dumpsters. The yellow boxes are multi-dwelling residential garbage. So again, dumpsters outside of apartment buildings. The blue boxes are municipal garbage. So those are the brown metal hide-a-bag garbage receptacles that are along parks and roads that the municipality manages. We also have the green trees are fruit trees on municipal property. There's 2 community gardens, and then the blobs that you're looking at are showing a density of fruit trees on municipal property. So we didn't want to, well, it would have been very onerous to map every fruit tree, and we're not able to see all of them in the backyards, and it's a bit of a privacy concern. So this is the solution we've come up with. Kim and others did a lot of work to survey the area and then determine where there's hotspots. And hotspots are helpful to know. So Kim is aware of best places to canvass with this information on how to manage fruit trees and provide information. And that's what we're looking at here. We did not map residential garbage for every single home because we know that each home has a garbage cart, and then how it's stored and how it's managed is variable. So that's what we're looking at here, these different types of attractants. For solid waste management, there's been a lot of progress on this front. First off, there in 2019, the garbage disposal and wildlife attractant bylaw was put in place. That is noting that garbage needs to be stored securely inside except on the day of collection. It also addresses other attractants such as bird feeders and fruit trees, fridges, and more. Looking at garbage, there's a number of different units, and some garbage containers are bear resistant. So the municipal garbage container, that's figure A, those are bear resistant. That's excellent. Figure B shows residential garbage for single dwelling homes, and those are not bear resistant. However, Kim has been doing a significant amount of education work doing bin tagging, and we are seeing some improvement there. For multi-dwelling residential and commercial garbage, There's a variety of dumpsters being used, different sizes, and then also different lid types. So some are plastic lids, some are metal lids, and then some are metal lids with a bar, which would be the most bear resistant option. And then when Valerie was doing her data collection, she did notice that many of the bins were left open. So there's a combination needed. Potentially people are needing more access to different types of bins. Potentially they're needing more education about the importance of locking them. At the transfer station, that is electrified, so that's very positive, and it's managed well. There's staff on site all the time, that it's open to the public. So that's a great note there. Regarding fruit trees, there's a high density of apple and cherry trees in residential areas on Minneker, Mountain Drive, Tamarack, Gardner, Simpson, 43rd Street. And then the NRM has also planted cherry trees along the community trail and at Bob Price Memorial Park. And that's notable, especially because they're fairly young. So as they mature, they maybe become a greater attractant. Not all the trees are well managed. Many trees are not pruned well, and many of the fruits fall to the ground and are left there. So without a gleaning organization in town, some people are lacking resources and ability to manage the trees by themselves. There are no landscaping guidelines in the development permit process or to guide public works. So in the future, when trees are planted on park lands, there's no guideline noting that they must be non-fruit bearing. However, something that is quite positive is that there is a tree memorial dedication program in place, which was put in place recently, and that's noting that only WildSafe trees should be planted. So that's great. It's seeming like guidelines that are being put in place in recent years are having that in mind. Looking at other attractants, the Midtown Community Garden has a short fence around it. It doesn't have any compost, but there hasn't seemed to be very many issues with bears. Kim was telling me that it's not too heavily used because deer are more of a issue with the garden. There's also an increasing number of backyard chickens. We haven't mapped that because of privacy concerns, but we are aware that there's some in the community and that they have caused conflicts. There's no bylaw regulating backyard chickens or requiring electric fencing, so that's something to consider. Looking at bear habitat and travel corridors in the community, Northern Rockies is within great bear habitat. There's a number of natural foods available to bears, and Kim and CO Clancy have mapped these travel corridors all along the walking trail, the demonstration forest, and notably on, oh, it's just covered up on my screen there. Kim, what's the road in the middle there that's leading right into town?
53rd Street, I believe. It's the one right across from the swimming pool.
Okay, yeah, 53rd Street is one of the main access points that are allowing bears into the core of the community as well. So these are important places to note, thinking about how we can manage attractants and sightlines on these areas, which is the first places that bears are going to be entering the community.
It's 53rd Avenue West. Sorry about that, Heather.
Okay, 53rd Avenue West is this, the road in the middle there. So with all the information that we have collected and I've discussed, we use that to identify these risk areas. There is a list of all of the risk areas on the left. Risk areas included schools, parks, restaurants, and other areas where human use is overlapped with bear conflict, bear activity, and attractants. So where those two things overlapped is where we might see a risk. The risk areas are color coded by what we have identified as level of risk. And while no part of Fort Nelson is immune to bear conflict, these are just a couple areas that we have, based on this information, subjectively determined might be higher priority to look at. So that's what that means. You can see that there's 2 points that are higher risk, and those are GW Carlson Elementary and RL Angus Elementary School. And then we also just wanted to make a note of the entire residential area. So for GW Carlson Elementary, there's a photo there of the playground. You can see that it backs right onto a green belt, the community walking trail. And so, of course, just based on where it is, there's frequent bear activity nearby. On the private property across the street, there's unmanaged cherry trees and garbage. There is a locked commercial bin on the property, which is great. However, there's also smaller garbage receptacles which are not bear resistant. Those are throughout the community. Children will put their wrappers from lunch and other items in there, and then those are only emptied weekly. Similarly, RL Angus Elementary School is located on Simpson Trail on the west side of town. Again, there's frequent bear activity, and again, there's a similar setup with garbage where there is a large bear resistant commercial bin. However, there's smaller receptacles throughout the schoolyard that are not bear resistant, and they're only emptied weekly as well. To the north of the school is a residential subdivision, Angus Court, and it has several apple trees that have resulted in bear conflicts. Third, we wanted to just identify the residential area in general. The main source of conflicts, it seems, in Fort Nelson have been residential garbage and residential fruit. And so for that reason, we've where there's conflict, there is risk. So we wanted to identify the residential areas as well. So that is my, I'm not sure how long I've been online here for, 15-minute summary of hazards in the area, but it's really important to note also the progress that NRM has made. And so I wanted to just end on that high note, because the purpose is identifying the hazards, but there's also a lot of great work happening in the community. So does anyone have any questions?
Councillor Gerwin.
I do. I know I'm going to get this question as soon as people begin to read the report, but given that Fort Nelson Secondary School is right next to RL Angus School, and FNSS has got a low rating and Angus has got a high rating, is this the difference in just the amount of calls that have gone in that has determined that rating, or is it usage, or is it a combination of those two factors?
Certainly usage, because youth are on the elementary school who are a little bit less aware. That's a big factor. And then Kim, you were the one doing the in-person surveys. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, right behind the high school is their track and field. So it's an open clearing, which is quite large, which can be a deterrent for wildlife. They usually prefer cover. So yeah, that field being there is bigger than the one at Angus. The age of the kids at each school also plays into factor, and whether or not there's a chain link fence or not. So there's a number of factors, Lorraine. The biggest one is that the large open field, as well as the age of the students going to the high school as opposed to the kids at Angus.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any other questions for Ms. Richardson? Very well. Vanessa, you had some things to add?
So I was going to speak regarding the Bear Smart Community Program. I am cognizant of time. We only had an hour and we've used up that time. So I don't know if you are stretched and want to defer this part, or I can go through it.
Councillors, are you able to stay? Very well. Continue on.
Excellent. Thank you all for your time. So Can everybody see my presentation?
Yes.
So this is just an overview of the Bear Smart Community Program. The Bear Smart Community Program was developed by the province in 2004, and it provides a systematic framework for reducing human-bear conflicts. And it was developed with people that have expertise and lots of expert opinion to develop this program. So why do we need a Bear Smart Community Program? Well, the Conservation Officer Service receives, on average, almost 30,000 calls per year regarding wildlife. That's a lot of calls to the RAP line. And I took note about the recommendations for making the RAP line easier. I don't have control over that, but I can definitely suggest that maybe this would be an easier way to field all this information. But you can see that black bear predominantly are the dominant species that are resulting in these calls. And that's because they are predators, even though 80% of their diet is plant-based. They also are very accustomed, they're numerous and accustomed to being close to people. So because of all these factors, the safety risks that they cause and the number of calls that are received, having a Bear Smart Community Program is something that is desirable in many communities. Couple of things I want to add is human habituation and food conditioning. So these are two really important concepts that we convey in education, and this is what really drives conflict. When bears become conditioned to food, human sources of food, it is a learned behavior that we teach them. We teach them that it's okay for them to come into communities to scavenge and forage for food. So this is something that through all the education we do is we're trying to prevent the food conditioning of bears and other wildlife. Human habituation is when bears start to lose their natural wariness. So bears in nature are naturally wary of people and tend to want to avoid us. You encounter a bear on a trail, it usually wants to go in the other direction. However, they're also very food motivated. So when they get food rewards, they start to lose that fear. They get more and more experiences around people, and then they lose that fear and they spend more time in our communities. And space is safe. And when you lose that space, bears become more nocturnal, foraging for people to try to avoid us. But if you're out there at night and you're opening at the door to your garage and you step outside and there's a bear, that short encounter can lead to a defensive attack. So we want to discourage bears from lingering and foraging for food in communities. And there are a number of sources of food attractants in communities. So this is why the issue is complex. It can seem overwhelming at times. So having a strategy to deal with high priority and work down the list of attractants in a community is really important, and recognizing that all of these can lead to food conditioning in bears. I added this slide, relocation versus translocation. Why don't we just move the bears? And this is a really valid question. We get asked this all the time. Bears, through their life, a sow teaches her cubs where to forage for food in a community. And that cub learns where those places are. It gets a food map. And knowing where that food is and where it is across the landscape is how a bear survives. If you take that bear and you translocate it to another area outside of its home range, now it's going to deal with other bears that might want to kill it. So a dominant boar will maybe kill a juvenile, and it has to learn where to find food all over again. Well, many bears, if you do a short distance relocation, will just come back to that community where they already knew they were successful in finding food. So short distance relocations tend not to be successful, and long distance translocations tend to, we don't really know what happens to that bear. Does it survive that relocation to outside of its home range? It's very stressful. They have to be tranquilized. There was a grizzly bear that was relocated 3 times in the Squamish area and it ended up dying. Each time it kept trying to come back to known sources of food. So the way to resolve the problem is really to get to the root cause. Mm-hmm. And if you relocate or translocate a bear, there's just going to be another one to take its place. We have a very healthy bear population in BC, and that's not going to change anytime soon. So it's easier to change our behaviors. Well, actually, it's not easy, but it's something we can actually tackle versus trying to change bear behaviors. So the goals and benefits of a Bear Smart Community Program: reduction in conflicts. Everyone can agree that's a good thing. Improve community safety, not just for people, but for our pets as well. Reduction in property damage. Like, this is the one thing that happens the most, is property damage, damage to fruit trees, loss of livestock. Also, few bears need to be needlessly harmed or killed, and it increasingly aligns with society values throughout North America. What is the process? Well, the good news is Northern Rockies regional municipalities made incredible progress on these criteria. So having a bear hazard assessment, a human bear conflict management plan, embedding some language into official community planning documents, having an education program, a bear resistant waste management system, and bear smart bylaws. You've already hit 3 of these boxes off. So you only have 3 other ones, which are already being worked on as we speak. So major progress made along this. Also really important is having a bear working group. So not one person can shoulder this alone. Kim can't shoulder this responsibility by herself. It takes members of staff, it takes the COS, everybody needs to be involved in this process, a little bit of everyone's time, because there are decision makers that need to be involved, there are expertise that is required. So we need people that know what are the human bear conflict issues. Well, the COs and Kim on the ground are going to know what's going on. Who has expertise in solid waste management practices? Who has expertise in communication and community engagement? And that's getting community buy-in is one of the biggest parts. So collaborating with your communication staff is really important. Who has expertise in bylaws and pulling in bylaw examples from other communities, and how will they best apply in your community? And the jurisdiction and role of various agencies. So having members of the working group that all have these skill sets is really important. And this working group takes on the challenge and is passionate about making the community bear smart, and they take responsibility and ownership to seeing it through. Solution oriented, you want to reduce barriers for people, make it easy for people to become bear smart. And also be able to convey the messaging so that they can get support from funders and decision makers. So what does the Bear Conflict Working Group do? It initiates and supports the Bear Smart Community Program, also the Bear Conflict Management Plan, communicates back to the community members and various agencies, reports back to local government on progress, challenges, funding requirements, identifies challenges and fosters the development of solutions, and commits to timelines and progress. It can take a year, it can take 5 years. Every community is different, but having a commitment to making progress is really important. So you've done the bear hazard assessment. Thank you, Heather, for that great presentation. The next step is the bear conflict management plan. And that looks at the hazards and the risks identified in the bear hazard assessment and prioritizes which hazards to tackle, which are the highest risks, the highest reward to addressing, and the highest areas of conflict. And you explore solutions and develop proposals, recognizing costs and timelines. In that bear conflict management plan, you establish responsibilities, who's going to tackle what, and you have clearly defined goals, SMART goals. Maintain a working document that can be updated and changed as new information becomes available. And also find ways to different measures of success. Levels of conflict are not always the best measures of success. Sometimes it's actually measuring changes in human behavior, and are people adopting best practices to reduce conflict. Here are just some examples of community solutions that you can explore through your plan. Bear resistant carts are not necessarily the end all and be all. They're a solution. I love the strategy that you guys are working on, is making it a solution for people that have no other choice. Number one, storing indoors is always the best. However, if people don't have that option, looking at other ways to make it easy for people to secure their attractants is something really positive in the community. And along with that is education, making sure people are doing it right. And Kim's done an excellent job of providing that education and follow-up along with bylaw. Making it easy, looking at community solutions. So we looked at those commercial carts that you have. There's the one on the right. You can see the bear bar that is across. And also this commercial bin also has 2 doors that make it really easy to open, and they close automatically. So these commercial bins are ideal. Along with that commercial bin is a decal explaining the importance of using it correctly. So there's not someone standing there keeping an eye on people and how they're using it. If people look at a really bright decal that gives them information, they'll make the connection. Oh yeah, if I leave garbage beside the bin, that might bring a bear into the community. The business pledge is something we're really proud of. It's a positive way of highlighting best practices, community leadership from business community, showing how they are taking WildSafe practices seriously. They're making sure their staff are trained. They're making sure bear spray is available in their community. They're doing everything in their power to coexist with bears and wildlife and reduce conflicts. Community solutions, sometimes it's grassroots, just people helping people, neighbors helping neighbors, Facebook to Facebook posts. Hey, does anybody want fruit? I've got some fruit trees. Come and help yourself and pick the fruit off my tree. Help get it before the bears get it. So working together as a community. Electric fencing has been a great solution in many communities where you can't remove the attractant. So your transfer station or your landfill is completely electrified. It's been proven to be extremely successful on a industrial scale. It can be done in the community level as well. You can have temporary fences put up around fruit trees to give you time to pick that fruit. In this case, we worked with the Ucluelet First Nation and we actually helped them install an electric fence around their community garden. Very safe, very effective at keeping bears out of the garden, and what a great communication tool to illustrate a proof of concept of how electric fencing can be used. And putting on workshops, which is something that I'm hoping to work with Kim on and show how easy it is to put up an electric fence to keep bears out of your garden and out of your out of the livestock, and keep them away from chickens and beehives and fruit trees. The next step is to develop a solid waste, bear resistant solid waste management system. You've electrified your landfill, excellent. You're working on residential garbage. Still a little work to do on commercial bins, but you're well on that path. Also, all of this has to be supported by bylaws and education. And the sixth criteria is planning documents, making sure that whatever happens in the future in terms of changes in council or whatever else, that the community is committed to being a bear smart community for the long haul. It's not something that you get your certificate and then you forget everything. It's a commitment for the long term, that the community believes that is of value to reduce conflicts, ensure safety in the community, and the reduction of attractants. So you want to make sure some of that language is embedded in your official community plans, that it's embedded in your solid waste management plans, that it's in your development permits. So when you're approving multi-dwelling units, making sure they're addressing attractants and keeping them secure, making sure it's embedded in your landscaping guidelines so you don't continue to plant fruit-bearing trees that are going to draw bears into your community. And that's it for me. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions, councillors? Well, thank you. Are there any questions about anything that was discussed here today? Councillor Penny.
Just one question. I wonder, how do we decide when the bear is habituated? I realize that when we have conflicts, I understand we went through that matrix last spring on how it's elevated up until the bear is dealt with. But as Kim pointed out with some pictures that she had there, we had a couple of basically new residents to the community over the last couple of years that it was quite evident that they were sticking around and found lots of food sources. They may not have caused any conflict, but is that what we wait for? Let there be conflict before we do something with these bears?
Just wondering who that question was directed to there, Todd?
I left it out there for all of you, to be honest. maybe you would be the best one.
Yeah, we don't, of course, we don't want conflict or anybody to be in danger. That's our number one priority is public safety. But you know, our other mandate is to protect wildlife and to eliminate the issue, and the underlying issue here is attractant management. Right now, you know, the issues that we've had in the past, the bears have become we've seen complaints come to us where, it hasn't outlined much of a concern to the point where the bear can't be managed and the humans can't be managed. So there's instances where we would manage the public, and most of those instances, that's what we've noticed, is that the public can manage it on their own. And that's why kind of we sit back and give the education piece, incorporate WildSafe BC, and the bear will move on. Sometimes it's unfortunate that we don't get calls, and we come into an issue late, and the bear is now to food condition, and that's when they're euthanized, and that has happened. So it really comes back to leaving it upon the public responsibility to manage their attractants, and then we will respond accordingly, whether that's following up with the public and issuing violation tickets or warnings, and that has happened, or incorporating WildSafe to do the education piece, or unfortunately sometimes it comes to the bear's demise and it's euthanized. We spoke about it before, where it's not a viable solution to relocate. So that hasn't happened. There has been one instance where we did relocate actually last year, but that bear we saw no evidence of habituation or food condition. We had no experience with that bear, and it just found itself in an unfortunate circumstance. So he was relocated. Hopefully that answered your question in a roundabout way.
You bet. Thank you. So about a year and a bit ago, we had the grizzly bear that was out at Pioneer Way. And I think for me, it highlighted, your presentation today was very factual. And sometimes we have to deal with people on a more emotional level, where they are terrified of a bear that may not really represent that much of a threat. And Mr. Clancy dealt with this before. So I think the communication part is very important, to explain to the public exactly what the Bear Safe program is all about, and maybe to provide the public with some tools so they are not as emotional about this as and they have more facts to back up their concerns, I guess. But other than that, I don't have any other questions for you. If none of the other councillors have any questions. Oh, Councillor Gerwin, go ahead.
It's not really a question. I just want it said that during the winter months, we are no longer doing the bin tagging. So whether the bins are out early or too late or overfilled, that's not taking place now. So, but I think it still is creating a problem, because those residents that get out of the habit of it, then come spring, we have to do that education piece all over again. But more importantly, from the way that I see it, is that then allows the ravens to create this huge mess. So I know we don't have a continuing contract with Kim, but is there maybe that we can just not lose sight of the fact that maybe we should be doing bin tagging all year round in some form?
Just to add to that, Lorraine, you're absolutely right. When we start bin tagging in, the beginning of June, there's a good couple of weeks where it's like, oh my God, again. But after a couple of weeks, people realize that we're out and about and everything goes back to its normal, people stop doing it. And then towards the end of the year, it's really interesting when we start to get dark a little bit early. It's like, if it's dark, nobody can see me put my garbage out. It's quite comical, because it's happened exactly the same week this year as it did last week. When we got really, really dark, we started having a relapse when people thought we weren't out there. Or when it snows is another one. As soon as it snows, you roll your eyes, because you're going to go out and you're probably going to have 15 bins out there, because everybody figures the bear is asleep. So you're absolutely right about that. And then just to go back to Todd's quick question there, Todd, with the bear that was hanging around, Fort Nelson for most of the summer, he he was all over, and we saw him, you know, while doing our bin tag, and we saw him just about every single night. I mean, he had garbage day figured out. I mean, whether he was on the top of the hill or on the bottom of the hill, it all depended on garbage day. You know, he was still very easily scared away. You know, maybe not towards, you know, the last 2 weeks or whatever, but for the most of the summer, he was still very, very much afraid of people. And the only time I did have any concern with that particular bear was when he was in front of the rec center and one of our local residents decided it would be a good idea to throw rocks at him. Never smart, but that would be the only time I was concerned about that large bear, was when someone was throwing rocks at him.
Okay. Thank you for that. And thank you for your presentation today, Heather, Vanessa, and Kim.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having us.
You're welcome.
Administration report number 86, Bear Hazard Assessment, Bear Smart Community Status for decision. Mr. Barry.
Based on the, obviously what's in the report here, Mayor and Council, and also the presentations, it's just looking for some guidance from Council. We got some feedback during the discussions, of course, but looking for some guidance from Council in terms of, and also feedback in terms of the process that we're on. Is this Council still wishes to continue? Are we on the right track, I guess? And additionally, you know, does Council wish to have more information brought back in regards to the process and requirements to become a Bear Smart community, and what those logistics look like, and of course costs and impacts also. So just looking for some direction and feedback from Council.
So I think from the discussion here today, we still want to become a Bear Smart community, and I think we're going down the trail at the right pace. Any other councillors have any comments? Councillor Gerwing.
Before I decide about the Bear Smart community status, I would like some more information or costing on that. But I very much think that we should continue with the Bear Human Conflict Management Plan. And I think in this report, it says that WildSafe BC has provided a quota of $4,700 to draft a Bear Human Conflict Management Plan. And I would make a motion that we move forward on that specific component.
Is there any discussion on Councillor Gerwing's motion? Very well, I'll look for a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Penny. All those in favor? Carried.
And then, Mayor, further to that, then I would make a motion that staff is directed to pursue the logistics, capacity, and cost to pursue the Bear Smart community status.
Any other comments on that? Very well, I'll ask for a seconder.
Seconded.
Seconded by Councillor Roper. All those in favor? Carried. Very well. Was there any other questions? Very well. I will ask for a motion to adjourn then. Moved by Councillor Souls, seconded by Councillor Roper. All those in favor? And we are adjourned. Thank you.